Big time.
Hey, Ray.
What? What do you got?
Wasn't that the Johnson rag playing cha-cha-cha?
You sound like, yes, it was. It sure was.
But I never heard it played that way before.
Well, a good tune can be done anyway. Now, wait a minute. Hold it. Lad, wait a minute. Wait just a minute. Show Johnny. We'll prove it.
What do you mean, play another tip?
Johnson, no. Johnson rag for, is a waltz. Is a waltz. You got it? Here it is.
Alrighty, everybody. Hello, and welcome to this week's slightly delayed, because I'm really bad at scheduling, episode of The Designer's Den. I'm not really that bad at scheduling, but life is a thing. And so, thank you so much for joining us today, and I'm super excited to have on today my guest, Adam Hancock, who
Hello.
you might have heard his name in multiple of the recent episodes, because Adam is working on some ridiculously cool stuff. So, super excited to talk to him today about all of that, and kind of a little bit of a unique philosophy that Adam has towards design. So Adam, welcome. Do you want to do a little short introduction? I think that was okay, but
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me, Ginny. This is great. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. I'm Adam Hancock. I'm calling myself a game designer now, so that's wild.
Well, you do have publishing credits, so
Yeah.
it is technically correct, which, as we all know, is the best kind of correct. So
Yeah.
So no, kind of like my friends who are like, I wish I was a writer. I'm like, but you've written stuff, so
Yeah. You are a novelist if you've written a novel.
You are a game designer.
Yeah.
But yeah. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank
I
you.
actually kind of want to start off with the project that you currently have ongoing, your Kickstarter. For those who wander.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Because of overwhelming support, I think we're almost to 21,000, and we have reached all but one of our stretch goals.
Yeah.
Which is unbelievable. I put a lofty goal, what I thought was a lofty goal. I'm like, if we get 9,500, we'll make this game, and we'll make a beautiful game. But now we're gonna make it twice as beautiful. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, twice as beautiful, more beautifuler.
Yeah, definitely. And we do have some great artists working on it. Joshua Clark is an awesome Caribbean artist who made our beautiful cover. And HTT Paladin, or just Paladin, made the word mark, and that's super awesome. And then our character illustrator is Nicole, or I guess she's NITO_RE on Twitter, and one of the most gifted character illustrators I've ever seen. And I'm so glad when I just popped out of the blue, I'm like, hey, I follow you on Twitter and I would love for you to illustrate these characters. And she was like, yeah. I'm like, yes. So
yeah, well, the character artwork, and I'm just gonna go ahead and drop the Kickstarter link here in chat. The character artwork in it is phenomenal. It actually looks like you could have taken this out of the Monster Manual, the Player's Handbook, or any of the Paizo books, any of that, which are pretty well renowned for the quality of their art.
Yeah.
You got a great team assembled on this, and this actually kind of follows on a little bit to, I guess, your breakout product. Your Elf and Orc had a little baby, and so I am super excited for this to come out. Have a bit more of a exploration of these various ancestries and lineages and all of that. And yeah, so on that note, take a step back and
Uh-huh.
maybe explain the concept behind elf and orc had a little baby, because it kind of ties into um, a lot of the current discourse related to tabletop RPGs and a lot of the changes like we've seen in Tasha's.
It
Um,
does. I'm going to take even a bigger step back for just
okay,
1 second.
yeah.
So I edited a supplement called, and this is Ryan Langer's supplement. It's called Grazalex's Guide to Ancestry.
Hmm.
I think he was the first one to release anything onto the Dungeon Masters Guild that looked at the way race was done in a whole new way. Um, and I edited that, and after that, and it did pretty well. It's definitely a bestseller and got some buzz. But after that, it was just like percolating in the back of my head. It's like, how would I do it if
Hmm.
I wanted to do it? How do I give as many options to players as possible while also treating everything respectfully? And I decided that really what I wanted to do was to take all the races and separate them in half so you could choose either half.
Okay.
Um, so you could have, like, as the namesake of the supplement is, what if you took an elf and an orc and they loved each other so much that they had a baby? um and I knew I couldn't do it alone. So I got this I found this really amazing designer who had just released 1 or 2 products, but VJ Harris is just I love them so much,
Yes.
because they took this idea and right away fixed it in ways that I would have never thought of, and then we released it together, and we worked so well. It took us 2 months from the beginning of our working relationship to release. Um,
That was probably my favorite tidbit that I learned from my interview with BJ, is that y'all went from well, not straight from concept, because you'd done a little mental work on it, but you went from like, hey, do you want to work on this project, to hey, we published this project in less than 3 months. And
oh, it was
that is like, that is phenomenal in and of itself. Like, a
yeah.
product development cycle is not that short usually, especially on
No,
something as ambitious as that, because it's
well,
not a small book.
yeah, no, it's not. I would just say we need to do these things, and Vic would go away, and I wouldn't hear from them for a little while, and then they would come back, and they would have it all done, and they were like, "How's this?" And I'm like, "Well, this is great." So we just sort of worked in our own little cubby holes for a little while, and then joined forces once in a blue moon, and then put it all together, and it sang after that. So I'm really happy with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a gold bestseller on the DM's Guild. It is a whopping 113 pages long, and I think it really truly kind of laid the groundwork for like a more widespread acceptance of. So we can't just like think these are problems. We need to do something about these problems and create stuff that addresses them. People were like, "This is how we do it."
Yeah, Vic was great, and we had a great editor, Ashton Duncan, and she brought a lot of wisdom to the project, and yeah, and it's a gold bestseller, almost a platinum now. So I think it's done pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody can argue with that. And so that kind of laid the foundation then a little bit for this Those That Wander Kickstarter, because you had all these ideas, and then after you publish, of course, you're like, I've thought of another thing.
Yeah,
That's how it
it is.
works.
It is kind of that way. I was like, well, we have this great mechanic now for how we want to do, like, the parentages mechanic, which is what we used in an elf and an elf. Oh my gosh, an elf and an orc had a little baby. Um, and and so we just took that, and we're like, what if we revisited every single part of character creation and made it our own,
Hmm.
and brought the same kind of philosophy, like fine-tuned control put in the player's hands, um, with how they want to make their character. And so character creation is complete. Like, Those Who Wander is still built on the fifth edition chassis. It's you still roll a d20 to resolve conflicts or obstacles. You still have advantage and disadvantage, but the way you build a character and the way that they progress is different, like from beginning to end, from first
Hmm.
to 20. It's not even called levels anymore. First to 20th steps.
Okay.
It's all different. And I can review in detail each of those steps, but I don't know how nitty gritty in depth you want to go.
No, it's you. It's your hour. It's your hour. You know.
All right, I'll try to do this fast. So the first thing you do is you pick your two birth parents, and they give you your innate physiological traits. So you're not going to pick an elf and know how to wield a longbow for no reason, just because you're an elf. But you will pick an elf and maybe as one of your birth parents, and maybe get some Fey ancestry trait.
Or that keen sight. You know, that's a
You might
physical,
have keen,
actual.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, because elven sight is a little bit better than human sight. And so you might get dark vision from one, but then you can pick any other. The other side does not have to be human. You can pick any other birth parent. So if you want to be an elf dwarf or an elf, and maybe your other birth parent was a devil, be a
Hmm.
tiefling that's not human based but elf based. That's totally doable. And then you pick your background, and the background's really mechanically heavy. There's a lot of weight there, which is how it's different from D&D, because you get the languages you speak from how you were raised and the decisions you made early in life. You also get your ability score improvements actually come from your background, because if you chose to be a miner, or you chose to be a town crier, or you chose to be, that has a lot more to do with, um, if you get a +1 in strength or whatever,
Yeah,
then
because you're spending more time doing this physical
yeah,
labor, or you're spending more time like, if you're like a hunter, refining like your aim. Yeah, yeah.
right. If you're a half orc that spent like your childhood in a library researching, you might not have a +2 to strength and a +1 to constitution. So that's where that's backgrounds. And then you pick an heirloom, which we completely, well, we drew on fantasy tropes, but mechanically it's new. It's kind of like a sidekick, but it's a magic item that looks mundane when you first start, and then over the course of your campaign, it sort of awakens, and its personality comes to the surface. Um, so you might pick up your old family sword, and it's just a rusty old sword to you at first, but then it starts exhibiting these magical properties over time. Every time you take a step in your character progression, it also takes a step with you, and I think that's pretty exciting. And then the last thing is the steps, which is what we're substituting for classes. And a step is always just one of two options. Um, and obviously, if you know anything about how every time you take a step, those options multiply, it kind of blows up exponentially.
It's
We
a
had to
skill
rein it
tree.
in. Yeah, it is. But we had to rein it in and bring them together so you could branch out again, or else we'd have literally hundreds of thousands of options, because you can't just go exponentially 20 steps. That would be
A lot.
like a million page book. So
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can see that. But yeah, so the ones you've got on here, a couple of examples. You've got step one, you want to be a scrapper or an adept, and from scrapper you can go to brawler or warrior, from brawler to assassin ranger.
right.
And so you logical progression there. As you go into each one, you like look at the next two steps, and you're like, yeah, both of these paths make sense.
Yeah. And we've actually gone and renamed all of those. So that's like draft one. Now draft two, they're all adjectives because they describe you instead of defining you. Because you're not just like a barbarian forever. You might be able to go to berserk, but that's just one aspect of who you are. And I really think that that's the main message in Those Who Wander is you get to choose who you are down to the finest level, but we're going to guide you every way step of the way with this really strong narrative element. And we hope if we've done it right, you'll never feel overwhelmed with options, but you'll always feel like you get to define who you are.
Yeah,
So
it's not just like who you are, but like why are you that way?
yeah, yeah,
I think it's really nice too because like, a lot of people struggle to get to like why is my character what it is, and it kind of leads you down that path where you're like, okay, like I'm level 20, and like now I know like why I've gotten here. Like I see the choices in my life that brought me to be level 20th, you know,
yeah,
uh mage who really just loves like to protect everyone around them. It's just like my
yeah,
jam.
yeah. That's actually how I described it to Paladin when he was trying to get inspiration for the word mark. I was like, you know that scene in some movies where the hero, maybe a superhero, looks back over the course of their life? Like I think of Captain Marvel. Like she looks at like all the things that she learned, all those times that she stood up again, and that defined her because she made that choice every single time. And I love that idea of like being a 20th step character and looking back at every decision you've made and like that's what made me who I am today. I think that's a really, really neat idea.
Yeah, and I think while some people don't want a lot of things in RPGs to mirror real life, like some things should, and like character creation and all of that, because like it's part of like what makes you you. Like you can look back
Yeah.
in your own personal life and be like, I can think of a lot of the choices that made me the person I am today.
Yeah.
And then you're like, you feel really invested in your own life, so like why would you not want to have like that same level of investment in your characters that you feel near and dear about? And of course, you can go as into this as you want, because some people just want to throw something together and have fun, but you can still do that.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like an intense emotional connection with your character, but it can be.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, those that wonder, if you haven't backed it, back it. Where it's setting $60 away from the 2100 now.
Whew. Wow.
Um, I know you're that's way more than you expected. Um, but
And
yeah.
I should also say, so Vic and I are on the team, and then we were joined. So we're a trio of the core designers. We were joined by Amber Litke, who, I mean, most of the credit for the step system is hers
Okay.
because did steps 1 through 4, and then she ran with it and did the rest and made a phenomenal, like made it all work together and balanced it. Her undergraduate degree was in game design, so she actually knows her stuff and the math, and she fixed it and made it really, really polished.
All right, so we'll have to get Amber on here in a couple of weeks then to finish out the trio, and really, the Kickstarter will be done by then, so really get
You
some
should.
nice
You
feedback.
definitely should.
Yeah. So outside of this heritage stuff, you've actually worked on a good number of projects, and I was just looking at your card stuff, and you also have another one that deals with alignment, which is something that a lot of people are kind of advocating to just like get rid of entirely. But I kind of like the project you did with these three like different takes on how to just look at it in an entirely new light. Um, and also, looking at that cover, it really just looks like a Matthew Whitby cover, which you also worked on something that is definitely a Matthew Whitby cover
I
that involves
did.
epic goblins.
Yes.
um, so, you've, I don't want to say you've kind of pigeonholed yourself into like someone who, uh, takes like the core concepts and just like completely redesigns them, but honestly, that's not a bad pigeonhole to be in.
No, I have a lot of fun trying to think, oh, like could I tweak this and make it my own? Could I tweak this and make it work a little better?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so it's not a bad pigeonhole.
Yeah, and so the alignments one is cleverly called realigned, and
Yeah.
you've got three kind of systems in there for alignment. I'm gonna put you on the spot and see if you can remember what they're called.
I cannot.
Otherwise,
No.
I could just read it to
Oh
you.
no. So Ryan Langer was the project lead for
Yes.
that one. And he came up with the bare bones of them, and then we fleshed them out. So, I don't even remember
No, you're fine because this was a group
what they were
project,
all called.
and so I don't remember the names of stuff and projects I did all by myself. So don't worry about it. So yeah,
No, it's
yeah, the focus axis, the conviction system, and the reputation system,
right.
and those are kind of actually self-explanatory. Like if you actually sit and dwell on what the names mean. Um, but I like that it gives you this three different like, how much is it like focused? Are you focused like on your own self, or are you focused on like other people, like that paladin, for example, who's all about like very selfless, like I'll give my life to save this town, or conviction, whether that conviction be good or bad, like how strongly do you hold it?
Hmm.
And then reputation, of course, we're familiar with from countless games. You can garner a good reputation or a bad reputation. You can get the town's guards after you in every town or not.
Right. Yeah, I think I did. Yeah, I did the reputation system, which was just, if you're evil and nobody knows about you, then they're not going to treat you like they do a super villain who, like the arch villain who controls an entire kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, at the same time that you're sort of plotting, like, how do people interact with me based on my, based on how evil I am, it's also a measure of your fame. Like, how well known are you? Are they even going to know who you are? And eventually, when you're 20th level, you'll be pretty well known, and your actions will speak for themselves before you even walk in the room. But if you're first level, you're just nobody to them yet.
What do you mean? I'm Star Lord. Haven't you heard of
Yeah.
me?
Exactly. That's actually a good sort of in movie depiction of that. So
Yeah, yeah. I constantly go back to that. Who are you? What do you mean? Who am I? And I think that was really well done by them. But yeah, no. Outside of that, you've got a fair number of projects that you've either worked on. A lot of collaborative projects tends to be kind of what you go for, which big same. Uh, it's just so much more fun working with someone to kind of flesh out an idea together. Um,
yeah, if you have the right team, it can be an absolute blast. Yeah.
mhm. And you kind of looked at a lot of different themes too. So you've got like a superhero kind of thing,
Uh-huh.
and then
I
you.
can't take any credit for writing that because the writers were all I worked on. I wanted to know how to run a Kickstarter, and
Mhm.
I was like, that's a great idea. I've read like 3 comic books in my life, so I'm going to take care of the Kickstarter side and you all run Creative Wild over it. So Cameron Day was we called him the creative project lead, and I was the technical, and he did an amazing job with this big group of people, and I made the money work
Yeah, but
and ran the Kickstarter.
it's you're still able to say that you've had some if not like hands-on doing the design work yourself, some exposure to these various I guess themes and elements that aren't like your traditional fantasy. And then you also have
Yeah.
like your wanted dead or alive is a bit more of that typical like old western tropes with all of the we meet in the saloon and we've got the wanted posters, which could go a little bit more fantasy too, because
It can.
um, there's definitely Robin Hood Men in Tights. They've got the wanted posters up there too, but that's more something like people do tend to associate with that wild, wild west kind of thing. We've got um, but yeah. So point of that being, like you've got a pretty vast range of experiences. So with that, like, what would what would be like the next big project that you want to work on?
Um, it's always uh, my design philosophy has always been I'm going to make whatever I want at my table.
Mm-hmm.
If I want it at my table, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna find a way. And um, and so that's how it was. Yeah, that's how it's been with just about everything I've done. Um, and so the next thing I'm gonna make is just the next thing that I want at my table,
Okay.
and that might mean it's a huge ambitious project, or it might mean it's a one-off solo project. Just whatever I do. So I've been kind of toying with a couple of ideas. Um, One would be an original role-playing game, but for kids, where you are heroic mice and other woodland creatures.
Mouse
Um,
guard.
it,
Kind of.
like thematically, it'd be pretty similar to Mouse Guard. I've actually never played Mouse Guard, so I'm not sure. Um, but I think a lot of the art would be similar to what I'm kind of thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just really want a game that I can play with my kids. They're not ready for Dungeons and Dragons yet, though they sometimes try. And I think that would be really fun. Like getting the acorn top for a shield and a sewing needle for a sword and going out and
Mm-hmm.
fighting wild, stray cats. That would be fun. I
Would
think
you?
that would be a lot of fun.
Yep. Would you be looking at like other systems that are kind of geared towards like children, like kids on bikes or anything like that for inspiration, or are you more looking to just like piecemeal something together just from stuff that makes sense?
Probably more of the latter. I think that if I get my head too much in other systems, then I start to sort of mimic them. But if I like lay all the groundwork myself first and then I compare it to other systems, that's much safer because then I'm not sort of just, copying ideas. So
I mean, well, that's sincerest form of flattery, imitation. Uh,
yeah.
yeah, Don't Be KD, though, does recommend Play Mouse Guard with them. And it is kind of
I
a fun
should.
system because there is a lot of focus on, like, you know, what is your character like? What do they want to do? What are their motivations? And less like, you got to know these numbers and stuff. It's more like, just tell me what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so I actually, I've only played it a few times, but I do really enjoy it, especially for like the very fanciful. Oh, we've walked into a log and there's a thriving mouse kingdom in here. oh, oh dear. Um, I believe the last adventure I played, we fell into a sinkhole, um, with which I narrowly avoided dying just by finding my way to this place. And then lo and behold, there was this huge burrow, like interconnected, like 40 mice families, and I'm just like,
That sounds fun.
is this where we were meaning to go? Because I didn't mean to fall through the earth. Well, yeah, this isn't how we were meaning to get here. But yeah, no, it is, and I think without risking taking too much inspiration from the game itself, you could definitely draw on like the books, like the
Yeah.
actual novels before you go into like the game system of Mouse Guard. That way,
Yeah, I should look into that. That sounds like a lot of fun.
yeah, yeah. Um, so with the collaboration that you're doing, like you get the opportunity to work with a bunch of people and kind of learn a bunch of different design philosophies. And would you say that that's really kind of like changed the way that you approach design yourself, being exposed to all of these other people's methodologies, or you still kind of just like
How I approach playing the game or how I approach
designing?
designing?
Yeah, designing.
Oh, that's a good question. I mean it must. I'm trying to think of like concrete
Like you're trying to
examples.
think like, how did I do it before and am I still doing it exactly the same way? And then you're like, it gets really fuzzy. Like, how did you originally design games? And you're like,
Yeah.
well,
Before I
I
did this, I wasn't even designing games. So how did I? Um,
because yeah,
yeah,
it's kind of impossible to like play games with other people and not be influenced by how they play, because people do tend to kind of like somewhat at least conform to like the overarching play style of your group. Of course, everyone has their own individuality, but like that's kind of what makes a cohesive group fun, is that like they've got that overlap, right? We all kind of have that synergy between our play styles.
Yeah. I can say with certainty that if Vic had not joined me for an elf and an orc, first of all, it would have been a much, much worse product. I mean, it would have been just me kind of with these half-baked ideas, because they really
Mm-hmm.
really turned it into something that could become a gold bestseller. Um, but also, Those Who Wander would not probably would never have existed, because that collaboration led to all these kind of nuggets of, oh, that's a good way of thinking about it. Oh, that's a great way of like viewing characters and what they can be. So I don't think I would have ever gotten to this point with Those Who Wander had I not collaborated with Vic on that.
Okay. And so most of what you work on is like mechanics stuff. Is that like your main thing that you like, or do you ever see yourself writing like adventures?
So I have written adventures. I have to say I don't love it, because the adventure format is not the way that I run a game as a game master,
Mm-hmm.
and the adventure format is not the way my mind puts together an adventure.
Do you want me to tell you
If
a secret? You can write
Go
an
ahead.
adventure any way you want. The
I know.
format is bullshit.
I have these plans. I have devious devious little plans of writing an adventure the way my mind puts together an adventure, which is just detailing a very rich world where adventure seeds abound, and then letting the players run amok. Because that's how I don't plan when I DM. I don't plan anymore. I just have things out there in this homebrew world, and then the players can just like, you know, go wherever they want to go, do whatever they want to do, and then it all kind of just comes together eventually. No,
I'm
it's
picturing
fun.
kind of like a choose your own adventure, but like more open in that like, you don't have to do this exact thing to get to here, but like if you do any of
Yeah,
these things, like it steers you in this direction and now you have these 20 options, versus if you do one of these things, steers you toward these you know,
yeah.
options all the way down.
And I as a DM, I don't even know. I have no idea what's going to happen next, which is how I like it. And I also don't have all. I have like the beginnings of ideas, because the world is kind of 25% written, and I don't know. So I don't even know the way the world's going to look until the campaign
Mm-hmm.
comes to a close. And I really, really like that. And so if I ever wrote another adventure, I did write the Boneyard, which is kind of just a one shot, a fun romp through a graveyard, if you can call that fun.
Yeah,
Um,
graveyards are fun.
and then I wrote some mini adventures that appeared in Baldur's Guide to Kingdom Building, and then I published separately for those who just wanted the adventures. Um, but if I ever revisited adventures again, I'd have to do it very differently than how Wizards of the Coast or Paizo does them.
Well, and that's the thing though. Like, a lot more and more people are seeing that like, there's this standard template, but like there's absolutely no reason to follow that. I know it wouldn't work for all kinds of adventures, but Oliver Darkshire released his little
Yeah.
Spud, the pug detective, and like the layout and the format on that was completely like, I don't want to say completely innovated, but it definitely wasn't like standard 5e template.
Right.
And it made it really easy to just kind of follow through and be like, okay, so they want to do this. Here's the things I need to know. And it doesn't tell me like what I need to do. It just says this is the stuff they need to know. And that kind
Yeah.
of lends to a lot of freedom. And so, you know, maybe you could find yourself an alternative format that works for you. Who knows?
I would love to do that someday.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Sorry, I'm getting very distracted by some of like the cover stuff. I'm looking at your page. Artwork is distracting. Um, but yeah. So I guess then we talked a lot about like the way you design, the things you've designed, but not really about like your design process itself. So like as I said, you're doing a lot of mechanic stuff. So like when you have an idea, like how do you really set down and approach like I've had this nugget and now I'm gonna make a product? Like
Right.
how do you get from A to Z?
So I should probably preface all of that with I have ADHD, and I think that
Yes.
informs my design process because my mind never stops.
I think
Um,
I don't think you'd be surprised by how many designers have that.
oh, I'm sure. No, I think there's this. I think of the people I know in the field who are like published in the Dungeon Masters Guild. I'm like, I bet about half of you have been diagnosed with ADHD,
It's
and
a
the
fair
other
amount of
half
neurotypical.
should be probably.
Yeah.
Because I mean, those are exaggerations, but I think that's kind of true. It sort of does lend itself to sort of this design space. Um,
It also makes it
but
frustrating because you have to write it down immediately, or it's like gone.
sometimes that's true. I think that mine manifests slightly differently than that, in that it just like my mind never stops, and when my attention is pulled away, which can be very jarring, and I kind of hate it when I'm like deep in thought and then somebody talks to me. I'm like, what? um
Why?
but for some reason I can pick up that if I can pick up that thread that I was thinking about before, it's like
Mhm.
the thoughts are all there. So I have this kind of like, um I don't know, like I'm doing dishes, I'm thinking about game design. I'm making dinner, I'm thinking about game design. I'm staring off into space, what am I doing? Probably thinking about game design. And then it when I sit down to type it all out, that first draft where I finally put words to paper, it just feels like a relief. Like I don't have to carry that in my mind anymore. It's finally on the page. Um, and then of course I think about the next part and pull on that thread for a little while I'm, mowing the lawn or whatever. So
Mowing the lawn
um
is quality thinking time.
it's cool, and those neat little rows, I'm a big fan. Anyway, um and then if it's collaborative, then I will, once I got the basic ideas down, I'll you know assemble the team and we'll start looking at it together. If it's just me, I'll just toy with the ideas for a little while until I'm satisfied with them. Um, I don't know if it's anything more than that. It's just, and sometimes I have to sit on it for a few days. Like
Mhm.
I will go and I will work on this part of the game until I can't anymore, which sometimes might be just 15 minutes, and then I'll work on this other part of the game, and I'll hop around or hop between different things that I'm making until uh because if I just let this be, I know that eventually I'll come back to it and some stuff will have worked itself out in my mind and I'll be able to tinker or get past that block that I had.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then I think another thing that people are always really interested in, and like once you get all these ideas out there and everything, like how do you play test all this mechanical stuff for balance? Like what do you
Yeah.
look at when you're thinking like is this balance? Is this good to, put out into the world? Like what are your like criteria for that?
Um, I don't think this is a completely unorthodox view, but balance is kind of unobtainable. You
That is
can't
true.
achieve perfect balance anyway. You can get close.
Right.
Um,
But you
and
can't avoid putting out something that's like so good that no one wants to play anything else, which is an exaggeration because that's never going to happen.
That's true too. So as long as they're sort of like approximately, I think one thing that helps is that if you just keep going over the material, right? Look at things that come from trusted publishers, Wizards of the Coast, people on the DMs Guild that really know their stuff. If you look at that enough, over and over again, you see multiple iterations of that. And I do some editing work, so I get to see it there too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you just keep looking at that stuff, you kind of get a feel for, yeah, this is a third level thing. That's a seventh level thing. This class would be a little bit too strong compared to that one. But in terms of like perfectly balancing it, I never shoot for that because I just think that that's, you know, not gonna happen.
And it's also like sometimes like really just like not worth the energy to like
Yeah,
trying to get that level of refinement. Yeah,
yeah,
I actually completely agree with that. I mean, obviously, like of course you want to have other people look at it and tell you that things like, yeah, man, this this subclass mechanic is completely bonkers, and this is like 4 times as much damage as any other uh level 4 ability can do. Maybe we want to like align it a little better.
yeah,
Because sometimes you just get so excited and so into it, and you're like, man, this is really cool, like that cool factor, and then you go back and you're like, okay, still cool, but we're just gonna turn the dial just to
yeah. As long as it's not cooler than the other character is cool, because then that's not fun.
like an example that I think of, and we'll go to Wizards of the Coast, tried and trusted, Warlocks and Eldritch Blast.
Hmm.
Do you know a Warlock that doesn't use Eldritch Blast?
I don't, and I have one in my campaign, so
Mm-hmm. It is too good for anyone to not take, and I think that's not necessarily a huge flaw because Warlocks themselves aren't like the best class, but it's always kind of like frustrating when you see someone who's like new to the game and they're all excited to play a warlock because they have this idea in their head about what warlocks are from movies and stuff. You think like um I don't know, I always kind of think like Rasputin from Anastasia, but
yeah.
that's just me. But then they get it and they're like, okay, they want to be as effective as everyone else at the table, so they're like, I cast Eldritch Blast. It's your turn again. Okay, I cast Eldritch Blast. And you're like, but you have so much stuff. And they're like, yeah, but like none of it's useful.
Yeah, and then there's some what are they called? Invocations that actually improve Eldritch Blast, so you're even more,
Like the
you know,
empowered and the one
inclined to go that way.
it
Yeah.
makes it twice as strong. It goes twice as far, and it's just like I get someone on the design team really loved Eldritch Blast, but like you're not supposed to have a favorite child. So
And Fireball. Fireball for wizards is like you have to. But
I mean, yes. I mean, I personally, as a player, don't have a problem with this because my philosophy is there's very little that cannot be solved via the proper application of fire. Whether that means using a very hot fire to burn a delicate hole to force your way through a wall, or whether that means burn down the entire village because it's all trash and we need to start over. you know.
yeah, I actually like playing I almost never am a player, but when I am, I kind of like playing the player, I mean the character that's a little underpowered. So everyone sort of like feels bad for them, but they're such a good part of the team because they're such a team player.
Yeah. I mean, I've got characters like that, but then I also had like my first main character where in the first main campaign we got to a part and there was this like hideout and it was like completely overrun with villains and we were vastly outnumbered and I'm like I cast fireball and they're like everything's made out of wood and the roof is straw.
Uh-huh.
You heard me. I see 37 problems trying to kill the 5 of us.
Yep, that sounds fun.
um
You would be welcome at my table because that sounds like a blast.
haha.
Oh.
Yes. Um, but yeah, so somewhat important and all. Okay. Well, in the interest of like not running over and everything, do want to try to get this to a logical conclusion. So I guess then the last thing that I generally try to get from people is like, um, you know, if you I already asked like what kind of project you want to work on, but like, you know, if you had like all of the options available to you, you know, you could work with anybody, you could work on anything, and you just knew the systems, or you know, all this, you had all the knowledge and all the resources available to you that you need. Like, what would be like, you know, the one big dream collaboration, solo, whatever project that you'd really just
Wow.
want to put out into the world?
Well, I'm kind of like my design philosophy has always been I'm gonna do whatever I want
Yeah, for your
the
team.
very next time. Um, like the next thing, my dream project is always the next one I'm gonna do.
Yes.
So I'm kind of already doing it. Those Who Wander is like
I
the biggest idea I've had so far.
you know, I honestly like kind of admire like that viewpoint, because like you don't feel like you're constantly letting yourself down because you're not doing like you're not moving fast enough to get to your big ideal dream, only to find out that your big ideal dream doesn't excite you as much as you thought it did. You're doing
Yeah,
what makes you happy the
yeah,
whole time. And if it gets bigger and better, you know, in other people's view, then cool. If not, like
yeah.
you
I,
still
I
loved it.
it might be, but like Icarus, I might be flying way too close to the sun and gonna get burned and fall in the ocean. But I'm gonna have a blast doing it. It's gonna be a good time. And I'm going to and if I can do that and also um, you know, push other people that I collaborate with a little bit closer to success
Mm-hmm.
as well, then even better. If I can be happy and everyone else around me can also find some success, that's awesome. And we're gonna keep doing it because the profit margins are too slim in this company to be cutthroat. I mean, this industry to be cutthroat.
That's so
Like,
true.
why would you ever want to do this if you didn't just like do it out of love for the games that you're
That
making?
is true. As my good friend Paige, my co-host for D&D Roundtable, always says, the best way to end up with a small fortune in the tabletop RPG industry is to start with a very large fortune.
That's right. And yep.
um, and yeah, well, I think you're kind of a little bit the embodiment of that. You know, paladin. You described yourself as paladin. You know, make me happy, but you know, gonna empower everyone else. You know, do the thing, and I think that's very touching. You know, and I think community definitely needs more people like that, lifting each other up and everything. And I've been overjoyed to find so many people who have that same like enthusiasm for um, you know, helping others and building them up. And that's how we're getting so many great collaborative projects, and so many people are just learning and continuing to excel because so many of us have that same mentality. And you know, I just can't wait to see what comes of it, you know. Other people working with you and then getting your great ideas and taking them on and sharing them with someone else, and you got this big, you know, melting pot of all these ideas, and we're great. We're all great together, right?
Yeah,
Um,
that would be ideal. I did think of one person that I've been trying to work with, but she just never has the time. Sadie Lowry is one day going to edit my stuff, but
yeah,
not yet, I
yep.
guess.
All right,
She's
Sadie.
very, very busy. Very busy. So
Sadie is by far one of the busiest people I know. Especially now that she's gone like full time
I
editing
know.
work and doing
I
it, and
know.
I'm just forever excited that I got an opportunity to work with Sadie when I was working with Matthew Whitby on Taiki's Torment, and it was an absolute joy. And she's gonna get to you though; she'll remember that.
I co-edited Supers and Sorcery with her. I was a technical project manager and I edited half of it. Um, and that was as close as I got to her editing. I think I had one magic item in there because I was not a writer on that
Yeah.
project. And I was like,
So reading Sadie's little editing notes just brings me so much joy.
yeah, no, it was great. It was great. Um,
Yeah.
so
And likewise, one day I'm gonna get Sadie when she has time on a Sunday to talk about how cool she is.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be awesome.
Um, yeah. Well, it has been an absolute joy talking to you, and I just want to thank you again so much for being on the show today and for being super patient with my scheduling. Do you want to tell everyone, you know, where they can find you online, where they can find your stuff, and give you some money so that you can save up to work with Sadie.
Yeah. Maybe if I just had enough money. So you can find I'm at Adam Makes TTRPG on Twitter.
It's right below your face. Yeah.
I have a card web page. I think it's just Adam-Hancock.
It's on your Twitter bio.
It's on my Twitter bio. And you can find my latest project on Kickstarter right now. It's Those Who Wander with VJ Harris and Amber Litke. And that's about it. I'm not on Facebook. Don't believe in Facebook. Don't want it.
You have a newsletter.
I have a newsletter. Also, you can find the link for that. I'm about to drop volume 2. So
Ooh. Get in on the ground floor while it's
yeah. We'll talk about in the next newsletter issue, we're going to talk about Those Who Wander art. Get to see some new stuff and behind the scenes stuff. So
all right. Well, that sounds exciting. All right. Well, next week, I have to pick up my piece of paper that's too far away for me to read it. Next week, I am going to be talking with Casper Kirkter-Polanius, and then Brendan Lewis the week after, Connor Self the week after that, and then RP Davis, and last but not least, I have just scheduled wow. I am blanking on this. Just scheduled Matthew Whitby for the 14th.
Good.
Woo! Yeah. So super excited for that, which is probably why the invitation said Matthew's name, because I copied it to create his. But anyways,
Got it.
Life is difficult, and yeah. So super excited to have you here today. Thank you.
Well,
so
thanks
much.
for having me.
Can't wait
This
to
was
see
great.
How the final total on Those Who Wonder is. Get it now before it's before
one more stretch goal.
Get it now before you have to get it later.
That's right.
That's pretty much it. But yeah, that is it for this episode of The Designer's Den. Until next week, when I should be good at 4 p.m. Central. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.